Welcome to 2 in 22, where we provide 2 insights on go-to-market success in just 22 minutes. I'm the host of the show, Gary Schwacke. Each and every week, I host a conversation with an experienced professional who shares 2 insights and the stories behind them that they feel are critical to go-to-market success for growth companies. We will hear from executives and private equity investors with a variety of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. These professionals are working towards exceptional things with real-world constraints and challenges, just like you. If you are tired of marketing and sales hacking and want an authentic, practical guidance on go-to-market success, then this is the show for you. If you can't stick around for the live show, you can get recordings and highlights of all shows by subscribing to the review on our website, 2in22.com. Now, let's jump right into the show. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of 2 in 22. I am really excited to introduce my friend Garth Bolton. Garth is a genuinely wonderful human being, has a great spirit and fun around him, and is an outstanding sales and business development person, and just love the way he breaks down the world and thinks about it. So Garth is currently SVP of Business Development at People, a data company, which you'll be excited to hear a lot about. And has a long career in sales and business development. Probably most noted for being the co-founder of Jigsaw, which is now part of Salesforce, and that kind of an early into the days of data, which we all swim in today. And a side note, he also runs a mean dead man pool, which we can get to at the end of the conversation. But let's bring Garth into the conversation and look forward to welcoming him. Hello, Garth. Welcome.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for being here. So let's talk about this journey of data and sales. Talk to me about. I mean, you're a born salesperson, as we've talked about before, and love to spend some time with you. But also have had a really cool career on the data side before it was probably the thing it is today. Would just love to hear about that journey a little bit.
Sure. I'll just go back to when I graduated from college in 1992, and I was deeply in debt. Had become due in about 6 months, and so I had to kind of go the corporate route. And I actually got a job as an analyst at a bank in New York, and then was helping a friend of mine get a job, and he was an engineer. And so we looked at some of these technology companies, and I let myself go to one of their info sessions, and then I did an interview, and the next thing you know, I was working for a technology company in Boston, and that was sold client-server development tools in a Unix environment.
Wow.
Which
you just dated yourself.
Because I didn't know anything, and it was sink or swim, and I learned a lot in a very short amount of time. And I've always considered myself a salesperson, despite, title and roles over the years. But after about a year and a half in Boston, I followed the tech wave to San Francisco. The 90s were my 20s as a salesperson. And I just played Who Wants to Make Me a Millionaire? I probably worked in 6 companies in the 90s, all of them startups, all of them, 2 of them went public. I mean,
wow.
But, I was a millionaire a couple times on paper, but it could never get that elusive, like money in hand.
Yeah.
And so the next thing you know, it was the tech bust happened. September 11th happened. And I had a wife, and a pregnant wife at that. So I had to change kind of what I was doing in order to sustain my my lifestyle. So started a company with a friend of mine, another sales guy, and it was the only thing that we really knew about was, or the only business problem that was staring us in the face was that salespeople didn't have a way to get direct dial, direct contact information for for decision makers in companies. There were just these generalized data services, Hoovers and Dun and Bradstreet. There was no LinkedIn, there was no Facebook.
This is early 2000s, right?
Early 2000s. These were just starting.
It's hard to remember that's like pre-iPhone, pre-Facebook, pre-social everything, right? Pre-LinkedIn, the stuff we take for granted today that's amazing.
And the words that we used to pitch the original idea for Jigsaw, which was just a big collective data place on a community-driven data place on the internet, we're like, it's combining people's Rolodexes.
Rolodex.
Because when you used to have to do what we called the admin shuffle, you'd call the 800 number of Cisco and then try to convince them to put you together with a human being, where you could actually ask. So there were lots of calls and lots of selling that had to take place before you ever said anything about your product, know. And so you had to work to get to a no. And so at any rate, we looking back on it, we had a very storied experience. It's over 8 years. We took 3 rounds of funding. We had an exit to Salesforce in 2010. It certainly smooths over all the ups and downs and all the crazy startup stuff that happened. But what we really did was we got a crash course, because we were both more or less enterprise sales people in technology, and we got a crash course in data, and all things data, and really did pioneer for a certain extent, some of these now big companies like ZoomInfo, really got their start right around the time that we did, and drafted off some of the learnings that we had, and maybe didn't have to step quite as hard into some of the potholes that we stepped into.
That's a good way to describe it. And then I know there was some obviously some startup experiences beyond that, and then and now at People. Tell us a little bit about People, because that's an extension of that into the data space and your role there.
Sure. People is actually a 16-year-old company. Got its start as a consumer search engine. Just literally use case. Someone moves in across the street. You want to know what's going on about them. You pop their name and whatever you know about them. And then People is constantly searching across all public records and all digitally available records and putting together profile information. Basics like email addresses, telephone numbers, past addresses, where you went to school, very top line stuff. And as I said, all publicly available. And so the company morphed, and the business model was advertising, like a search engine. And then literally just like Bing or Google, but focused on individuals and individual contact information. So fast forward, as I said, 15 years, we realized that we were better at the data part than we were at the marketing out to lots of individuals. So all of our competitors became our customers as we license the data via API to them. And now we sell into 3 distinct channels, or not distinct, but three separate channels: investigations, the government, and then fraud management, and financial. It's trying to figure out if the transaction is legitimate based on the information. Is this a real person? Is this a real identity? And then the channel that I sell into is what I became known for is I ran into the CRM, people using the data for marketing purposes, and marketing contact.
Yeah. So you get a front row seat with a lot of different companies. You think about, the data is where the rubber meets the road, and then your experiences in multiple startups and then advising many of them as well. So let's jump into your 2 insights to go-to-market success. What are those, and what was the journey that led you to realize that these are pretty critical?
Sure. Both of my insights were gleaned from more than one company, and I was primarily in startups or early stage companies. So it was from the point of view, where growth is grow or die.
Right.
And my first insight was I think I'll start with the second one that I gave to you is as you're gathering those all important early enterprise customers, many times which are they're sort of agreeing to use your product, and they probably are going to give you some revenue, and
Right.
and you are just so beholden to them, but don't allow them to lead you astray with your product vision. And because you're trying to build a product that you can resell to everybody, and and solve a business problem, etc. And
Yeah.
what happens is, and I'm thinking specifically of, I worked for a middleware company right in the middle of the boom, and we had developed it was a middleware company, but they had developed some security software that Cisco was using as they built Cisco Connection Online, which
Wow.
there was a time when there was $8 billion. No, it was $4 billion in worldwide e-commerce, and 2 billion of it was Cisco Connection Online. We in this little company, we were the underpinning of that security. So, so what we were trying to do is create a product that we would then, at the very least, have a division of our company. And
Right.
really, we were thinking that Cisco would probably just buy us. And they just sort of strung us along. They were like, well, could you work on this? And could you work on this Cisco specific thing? And really what we were plumbers for.
Right. You became their dev shop.
And we were not, and we were not moving forward with our, and then when Cisco sort of broke it to us that they really weren't going to buy us, then it submarine the company. I mean, it was 1998, so they were ultimately able to sell to somebody, because,
right.
But it was a learning, and I realized I've seen it to some extent happen in a lot of companies that I've worked at. It's because, you require revenue to stay alive, but it's not the revenue that you want. It's not the repeatable revenue coming from multiple sources. And it's, maybe it's even services revenue, which is the kiss. You're just, literally, you're like, I want to sell pipe fittings. I don't want to be your plumber.
Right. Yeah. And it's, honestly, it's easy, even not for non-startups, to be in that situation where, in fact, we're working with a client right now where they have tens of thousands of customers, but then we did a segmentation exercise and discovered that 85% of the revenue is from a much, 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 much smaller component of those customers. And the entire organization is around that rhythm, right? And what those customers want, how they buy, all of that. And that's fine if it's by design, right? But if you're moving into a growth segment, then that's the whole point of the go-to-market. Like, what is it we sell? What problem do we solve? What are we going after? And otherwise, you're a custom dev shop, basically, for software anyway.
I know, and it's and sometimes the reality of who you are and who you're selling to it clashes with the founder's vision, or even the executives, or the investors. Like, no, we sell to Google, and you're like, actually, here. And whether you want to see it or not, it's you really, it can take a lot of discipline to realize that that's not, it's not going according to your vision. Maybe that doesn't necessarily mean you're failing. You've got to maybe change your view of the world a little bit.
Right. And that's actually a really good segue. We've got about, believe it or not, like 8 minutes left. So wow. Told you it would go fast. It doesn't fly. Really good segue to the next point, the next insight. So let's cover that.
This is one that was absolutely front and center for me at Jigsaw. We're a sales run company, and trying to build a machine. Because we very quickly went from selling to sort of individual salespeople to marketing departments to
Mhm.
to companies. And,
Right.
and in the board meetings, all they wanted to hear about was the big companies we were selling to. And, um, and in reality, particularly as time wore on, there was so much revenue to be had from smaller companies and from the current companies that we were already working with.
Right.
And what we didn't realize was we were really incenting our salespeople and the whole company at large to just run in, get, to get 3 people using Jigsaw from Google, and then to move on. And you're just like, and all new customers require, marketing and education, and
Yeah.
uh, and maybe they've got to do a pilot, and it's so much harder. That revenue is so hard fought. And then whereas, or go through purchasing, things like that. Whereas getting upsell revenue and incremental revenue and other use case revenue from your current customers, it's, for whatever reason, it's just not sexy. But
Right.
it's not as, it's not as hard fought, and it's so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I'm thinking about another company with which we work where it's more transactional, so it's not SaaS. They sell widgets, but like with anything, there's a digital overlay to it. So there's an e-commerce component, and there is an inside sales component. And with so many transactions, it's exactly right. It's easy. Just you're at that point. It's well in the growth case where logos help, right? They bring credibility and things like that, and everybody wants to be able to put them on their website, even though the dirty little secret is there's only 3 people in the back office using it. We all talk about that, but it is this, and the impact it has on the organization is a great observation, right? It's like you don't even realize the in a way the culture that you're creating for the organization is everybody's focused on the quick hit, right? The new sale versus, and you're seeing more and more of this in the tech space about product-led growth. And in fact, listen to a podcast this morning on the importance of onboarding and that whole situation of how we think about customers for life. But especially in non-tech businesses, we see that it's hard to think about and make that shift towards wallet share. Like if you're focused on the right customers and they themselves are growing and expanding, and you're in a market that's growing, you can build a really, really good business getting the right customers and then growing with them, right? The combination of even low single digit growth combined with additional wallet share. I mean, you're talking about 20% growth a year from your existing customer base, which, needs some marketing, but not the new marketing intensity. And you don't need to go through the procurement. You're already all of those things. That's a fantastic point.
Absolutely. And just realizing the potential of your customer support. I mean, I can't tell, I worked in so many software companies where, when I mentioned the first company I worked at, very technical software company. And there were 2 places where people who were right out of school went and didn't know anything: sales and customer support. And they're just like, oh, why not put the developers, the hotshot technology guys are all developing new products and thinking new thoughts and whatever. And then some of them are in like product marketing, something like that. But the ones that are brand new or don't know anything, oh, let's put them in charge. Let's put them in with our most frustrated customers
that contribute the most revenue. Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, and just, sorry to not be too coarse, but I used to run around at Jigsaw. I'm like, all we need to do is not face our ass at our customers. And I'm like, and that seems to be all we want to do, because we're so busy like, oh, new, that you're like, all these guys that know you, and pay you and send you money. And, because they're not that's not a new conversation to have with the board, so you're like, and I was like, why are we doing this? This is bad, and there's so much potential in customer support, customer success. And it's gotten its due to a certain degree, particularly over the last, 4 or 5 years, but it's still, it's like old habits die hard. I find, and it's like, I talk to these companies and, what they're what they want is just more new logos. And you're like, look what you're leaving on the table here.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's, we're fond of kind of taking a holistic approach that we call the revenue engine, which it captures that exact thing, right? It's about ultimately deploying capital and earning a return greater than the cost of that capital, and all of the ways that you do that, and doing it at a faster pace. And so it's really breaking those things down. And I think, you've been on the front lines of this, that sometimes when that capital is perceived to be abundant, like you just get funded and now it is all about growth. I have seen it as well, is that you like all of those relatively straightforward facts that people see go out the window, and it's all about just growth. How this is a little bit of a tangent, but how, if you're a company, and we see this a lot on the East Coast, right? We don't necessarily have the funding ecosystem that you have in the Valley, is that they have to do more with less. And I think that actually creates a better company longer term, because they've got to deal with those constraints and figure out what is the real bottleneck here and go solve for that.
Yeah.
But for companies that have this dilemma of, we need new logos, and but yet we also want to be more thoughtful about it. How do you advise them to think about that equation?
I think the best way to do it is to, like you said, like, look at the data. It's like, how much are we spending? Real cost. Just across, not just in order to have that kind of sugar high of a new logo. It's and to be realistic about it. I think is the best way to try to convince you, because it really is against human nature. From the point of view of, I was an executive in the company, and I wanted to talk about the new flashy company that we were dealing with, that were, and then marketing too is fraught with, the next shiny thing, the next event, and you're just like, what's the ROI on this? Because a lot of times the ROI is with the boring stuff, and it's too bad, but that's kind of the way it is.
That's right. That's a great way to put it. It's like nobody likes boring, but oftentimes boring and simple produces results. So awesome. Well, let's. All right, we're gonna summarize. We took a little creative liberties with Garth's 2 points, but first, actually the one that we talked about last. Revenue is more than new logos. That's really thinking about the entire revenue equation and doing the work, doing the math to figure that out. And then also, very importantly and related, don't let the early customer tail wag the product strategy dog. Really be thoughtful about that.
I like that.
Well, Garth, always a pleasure. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. Be thinking about other people that you'd like to see on 2 and 22. If anybody jumps out at you, let us know. We're really fond of this, and I know that people are going to love to hear these quick insights and benefit from your experience. So thank you for spending the time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gary.
All right, Garth, we'll see you. Well, I always love Garth. He just cuts right to the chase, and is a straight talker and a good human being. So thanks for joining us. And again, you can look at 2and22.com for episodes, and also subscribe so you can get them in your inbox every week. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great week. Life is moving fast, so if you missed the live show of 2 and 22, you can get the video recording and highlights by subscribing at 2and22.com. You can also get the audio version by subscribing to the 2 and 22 podcast on your favorite platform. Thanks for spending time with us.